Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Brittany of BrittanyJJones.com. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome to my channel. I hope that you will like what you see and subscribe below for more. In this video, I'm going to be doing a preview of our upcoming sew along, and we're going to be sewing along to Mccalls 7960. This is a learn to sew for fun pattern. So if you're new to sewing, this is a great pattern for you to join in on and sew along with. If you are new and you're not sure what a preview video is, in these videos I like to just dig a little bit deeper into the pattern. I like to share with you the fabrics and notions and supplies that I'll be using to make this. I go over all of that. I go over the size that I'll be cutting, as well as open up the instructions on the pattern to make sure there's nothing crazy in there that will trip us up when we start sewing our sew along on Friday. That's when this video will go live, on Friday. So if you're interested in any of those details, let's get started with the preview video. So again, we're going to be sewing Mccalls 7960, a learn to sew pattern. It says that you will learn to sew patch pockets, learn to sew tie-ins, as well as learn to sew gathers. So like I said, this is a great beginner's pattern if you're new to sewing. So let's go ahead and read more details on the back. So the description says that this is a wrap skirt. It has length variations with hook and eye closures. A, B, and C has side seam pockets, and view D has patch pockets. Some of the fabrics that they suggest are cotton blends, gingham, linen, and lightweight denim. Now, I have not decided which view I'm going to sew. I'm leaning toward view D though, the one that has the patch pockets down here. But I do have enough fabric for whichever view. I have about 3 yards of linen that I will be using. So I have enough for either view on this pattern. We also need to purchase interfacing. Other notions that we will need is 2 sets of waistband hook and eyes. So down here for our finished garment measurements, they have the measurements for our hip line. So based off of that, and depending on which size I decide to cut, if I go with view A or view B, this is the views with the gathers, then I can cut the size 16, which will give me a 50.5 hip measurement for the size 16. Now, if I decide to go with view C or D here that does not have the gathers, you can see C and D, those finished garment measurements, then I will have to cut the 22. So it just depends on which view that I decide to go with. If I go with A or B, I will cut the 16. If I go with C or D, I will cut the 22. And again, this is based off the finished garment measurement. My hip measurement at the moment is about 49 and a half. So I will be good with the 50 or 50 and a half finished garment measurement for the hips. So that is the size that I will be cutting, again, depending on whichever view I decide to go with. So now let's go ahead and go over the supplies that I have purchased. First thing I have here is interfacing. This is the interfacing that I will be using. I purchased this from my local Joann's, and this is just a lightweight fusible interfacing. For fabric, I will be using this olive linen that I purchased from LA Finch Fabrics. This is just a really lightweight rayon blend linen, so I just love the way that this feels. So this is the fabric that I will be using. The other notions that we need is 2 sets of waistband hook and eyes. I only have the hooks right here, but I do have the bars, but I can't find them. But make sure that you have 2 sets of the waistband hook and eyes for this project. Next up is my threads. Here's my machine thread. Here's my serger thread. I also have a ruler here. I just like to keep one close by in case I need to transfer any lines or long markings. I have my ruler here for that. I always have my measuring tape so I can take new measurements whenever I start a new project. I always like to remeasure. These are the marking tools that I'll be using. These are the same thing, so I'll either use one or the other, but I just wanted to show you because I had a couple questions about what marking tool I'm using now. And these are some new Fixion pens that I purchased off of Amazon. I'll be sure to link below, and they come in a pack of like 8, and it's different colors, but I'm loving these so far. I have my point turner here to poke out any corners that we may have. This rotary cutter I use to cut out my pattern, my paper pattern. This is the rotary cutter that I use to cut out my fabric. I also have my snippers here to cut off any loose threads. Seam ripper in case I make mistakes. I have my seam gauge here so I can press up my hems and make sure my hem allowances and everything is even when I press it up. I have my pins as well as my pattern weights. We will also need an iron and of course our sewing machine. So now that I've gone over all of the supplies and notions, let's go ahead and open up this pattern and take a closer look at the instructions. All right, so let's begin. Before I start, I do want to show you all that the Learn to Sew for Fun patterns, they go into much more detail than other patterns do because these are for beginners. So they go over the supplies, how to select your size, the pattern, pieces that you will need, how to mark, how to adjust the pattern, the layout, how to transfer markings. They go into a lot of detail on these patterns. So I just wanted to show you all that. So now let's go ahead and start with the sewing directions. So I'm going to go ahead and follow along with views A and B. So the first thing that we're going to do is pin one pocket to each front, right sides facing, match up the notches and stitch at 1/4 inch seam allowance. Then we will press it toward the pocket. We do the same thing for both of the backs, pin pockets to each side, match up the notches, stitch them at 1/4 inch seam allowance and press them toward the pocket. And then we will stitch the front and back pieces together along the side seams, being sure to leave this opening between the large circles so we can use the pocket. Continue stitching down the rest of the side seam and also around the pocket. And then you will clip along the back seam allowances. And step 4, we will press the seams open and make sure that you press the pockets toward the front. And then at step 5, we will finish the long edges of the self-facing here and then turn the self-facing toward the inside along the fold lines. And then we will open out our facing and do gathering along the upper edge of the skirt. The gathering will be done at a 5/8 inch and also at a 1/2 inch to create those 2 rows of gathering stitches. So we will do that in step 5. And then step 6 picks up with view C. So I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead to the next step for A and B. So the next steps continue with view C as well as go into view D for sewing on those patch pockets. And then we pick up right here with the waistband. We're going to interface the wrong side of the waistband, fuse it together following the manufacturer's instructions. Then you return under 5/8 inch on the long unnotched edge, press it and trim it down to 3/8 inch. On view A with right sides together, we're going to fold the tie along the fold line, stitch it straight and leave this end open so we can flip it right side out. Then we would trim those seam allowances. Once you have it flipped out, trimmed and pressed, then we will baste the raw edges together. On the outside, we'll pin one tie to the right end of the waistband, centering between the fold line and the lower seam line, having raw edges even, and we will baste that in place. At 21, this is for all views, and with right sides together, we will fold the waistband along fold line, stitch the ends, trim the seam allowance, turn it right side out. At step 23, with right sides together, we will pin the waistband along the upper edge of the skirt, matching up our centers, our notches, as well as our squares, and then we will adjust the gathers to fit the waistband. And then at step 24, we're going to turn the self-facing to the outside onto itself so that it covers the edges of the waistband. We will stitch that in place and give that a good trim. Then we will turn everything to the right side and then slip stitch the pressed edge of the waistband over the seam allowance, catching only a few threads. You can slip stitch that in place, or you can also stitch in the ditch. The choice is yours. I would probably slip stitch mine though. Okay, and now the next steps are for view C and view D. But 28 is for all views, and we will edge stitch the lower edge of the waistband. Give that a good press. And then we will begin our finishings at step 29 by turning in the lower edge of the self-facing. So turn it to the outside along the fold line, stitch across at 5/8 inch, and then we will trim off the facing seam allowance only. Then we will turn that in and do our hem. Then at step 31, we will sew the hooks onto the waistband. Step 32, we will sew on the eyes or the bars to the waistband. And the last step for number 33, if you did view A or C that had the ties, we will sew on the remaining tie in this view, and then we will be all done with our skirt. Well, that is all for the preview. I really do hope that you all enjoyed it and found it helpful. If you have any questions, leave them down for me below. I'll be more than happy to answer. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Turn on your notifications so you do not miss when this Sew Along goes live on Friday. I'll see you all then. Blessings, everyone. Bye.